All right, so let's actually implement this this mythical compact duration, right? This presumably better implementation. All right, so having decided that instead of breaking up the data into these constituent hours, minutes, and seconds, and having decided that we should have just decided on the smallest value, the smallest interval for our particular piece of data. Yeah, this would have been just so much easier, right, than to deal with decomposing it into hours, minutes, and seconds, and having to go backwards and forwards and converting into all these, and only converting it only for human consumption, right? Whenever we have to display it for this particular species. So we have this in seconds internally. We have notice we're implementing duration. We still applying the same principles of making it so that we cannot inherit, right? We cannot override it, overload it. Also, making the data is immutable, right? It's stateless. So the same principles apply, right? We're applying information hiding, immutable, right? It cannot be inherited. So this is by default, right? If we see some interesting reasons why this should be inherited, then of course, right, it would not be final anymore, right? If we see some reason, then we can certainly inherit from here. Okay. Then here's the single constructor, right? That takes in the values of in seconds, right? And just again, we're validating some that this is positive, right? It's not negative. That it's a valid value, and we update the in seconds internally. We might also provide a convenient syntactic sugar way for humans to pass in values in hours, minutes, and seconds, but we would immediately convert it into seconds, right? And only convert it back to human form whenever it's needed. So we would, as a syntactic sugar for convenience purposes, we would pass around. We would create a constructor that would allow us to pass in hours, minutes, and seconds. We would do the arithmetic to convert it down to its smallest canonical format, right? But here's where the first clue, right, that comes in here that should make us pause at this implementation, right? We've seen this code before, right? That where we had to make the arithmetic operation of converting from hours, minutes, and seconds down to the canonical format. Right? We've seen that before, right? I believe we did that already in DurationImpl. And she said, "Wait a minute, didn't we do this over there somehow?" Right? And that immediately should raise a flag and says, "Ooh, wait a minute, are we introducing some redundancy here? Is there some code that perhaps should live in one place as opposed to living in two different places, right?" This immediately, if this goes to code review, in GitHub or whatnot, somebody might point this out to you. Says, "Wait a minute, isn't this also implemented over there?" Right? You're introducing redundancy into our code. This is going to be this is lowering the quality, the overall quality of our source code going forward. To maintain this is going to become a maintenance nightmare, right? Having to remember that if I change something here, I also have to change it over there. Right, so immediately you should try to point these things out, right? There's repetition. Should we fix it? Perhaps there might be a team decision that this is not worth changing, right? This is something that is very isolated. We know that this is a law of physics. It's not going to change, right? It's never going to change. So we might consciously decide that it's not worth changing. It's not worth over-designing the system, right, to eliminate this particular redundancy. We might do that, right? But it should be a conscious decision as opposed to, oops, right? And I wasn't thinking. Yes, it should be. Everybody should be aware, right, that of what might be going on here, right? So should we fix it? Maybe not, right? But it should be a conscious decision. Right, so in other places we might have similar things. in seconds. We have very similar functions, right, in DurationImpl that do exactly the same thing, right, of retrieving seconds, retrieving the canonical version of seconds. It's the same identical line of code. Plus also does the same thing, right? I think I'm missing a parenthesis here. That converts the different values into their constituent seconds, right? And then does the addition and then reinstantiates a new value. Yes? We've seen that before, right? It looks very similar to what DurationImpl is already doing. Again, right? We need to consider, is this worth fixing, right? Is this worth fixing? But again, it should be a conscious decision whether you decide yes or no, right? So perhaps having chosen not to fix this, it's not worth the effort, the engineering, and whatnot. As we progress and start implementing some of the other functionalities, such as converting it into a format, we look at this and says, oh no, this is way too much, right? This is identical to somewhere else. We've seen this code before, right? Why are we writing it again, right? That bringing it down to the constituent values and then formatting it. This is identical. Some redundancies might be a little bit too egregious, right? To accept it, right? To as a team, consciously and responsibly decide that we're going to let this by, right? And so this might be a little bit too offensive, right? And says, no, we have to redesign this. There's no way I'm going to accept this source code. This is identical to somewhere else. Let's try and fix it, right? Instead of just ignoring it, because these might be small little things that might on their own might not be a big deal, but over time these things accrue, right? And this is technical debt, right? This becomes a debt that you need to pay at some point, right? You're borrowing against the future, right? You're borrowing against the future that at some point you're going to have to maintain this. Sometimes you're going to have to come back to this, right, and change this. And so you're borrowing from that future just for your current convenience, right? And so ideally you would pay that technical debt today, right? And that will accrue in the future as ideally you won't have to come back to these. And if you need to change it, it'll be changed only in one place as opposed to having to change it in 2, 3, 4 places. Yes? All right, so again, technical debt. Right, so this might be a little bit too offensive. And so let's see how we could fix this, how we can go about and eliminate or avoid redundancy. Right? Remember, redundancy breeds inconsistency.